Hello everyone, it's Thumper the Rabid Rabbit. It's Thursday, February 7th, 2019. Wipe Day, updates, lots of them. We got some new components and some updates to old components. I'm going to start first with the old components that had bugs or issues and show you what's happened. First of all, the infamous root combiner bug. It has not been fixed. This is major disappointment. There's still the issue that when you put power through other components from a source before going to a root combiner, it doesn't work. Can't remove this, it doesn't exist even though it visually appears here. Root combiner still does not work after other components, so that sucks. Bug has been issued again, so maybe they'll look at it for a future update, but yeah, that's a bummer. One thing you will notice though is that the counter had a description that when it is in pass-through mode, it shows the amount of power coming in. Previously, it always showed the amount of power going out after it consumed one. They have fixed that. It now does in fact show its input power instead of its output power. So there's one fix. Another update is that they made a slight change to the memory cell, the flip-flop gate. Previously, memory cell had inverted out, output, set, reset, but they've added a third handle, a toggle. So this adds a lot of versatility now to this device. Before, if you wanted to turn it on or change it to true, you had to power set, and if you wanted to change it back to false, you had to change it to reset. So it was really great for flip-flopping a power source between two outputs, but it required two inputs that had to either share an event or have different events to make them happen. It's still good for that in that you can make something turn on and stay on or turn off and stay off. But now if you just want an event that flip-flops the power output, you can use the toggle. So every time you hit this, it's going to change from inverted to regular to inverted, regular, back to inverted, and so forth. The other inputs work the same as they used to. If you put power on set, it turns it on, power goes to output. You put power to reset, it turns it to off or false, and sets it back to the inverted output. But now we have this toggle so that we can flip-flop using only a single input trigger. So that's going to open up a lot of possibilities and simplify a lot of circuits that needed to kind of flip-flop themselves in order to go back and forth between set and reset. So we should be able to have a lot of fun with that. They did not change the memory cell's power consumption bug, even though it says it's consuming 1, starts at 20, puts out 19, starts at 20, puts out 19, still putting out all 20. It still does not consume power, so it's great as an extension cable like coupler still. Hopefully they won't fix that for a while because it's kind of handy. Feels like a cheat, but still fine. Other thing they did not fix is the timer. The timer still cannot be configured if it has no power. It still resets if you take the power away. In other words, it doesn't go back to where it was. So that's a bummer. I suppose there's a number of builds where this would be intended or expected behavior or very handy. But for those of you who are trying to run longer term timers and have to switch from like solar or wind power over to a battery or change power sources and have a problem with the timer resetting, fortunately you continue to have that problem, so sorry about that. All of the other components appear to be unchanged, and like the splitter and the other switches, they all appear to be unchanged. Not that there was any problem with them before, but basically no changes to the other existing older components. With one exception, there was this weird artifact in the staging branch that looks like it made it to the main branch release. The little block components like the memory cell, the blocker, the branch, any of those little ones, this may have something to do with the Unity update. When you get far away, they disappear. You can see like the branch and the blocker's lights are still on the wall, but oh, there they appear, there they disappear, appear, disappear. Kinda funky. Like, there's my root combiner down there, and now it's gone. And then you get close enough, and it draws again. So weird draw distance thing happening here that didn't exist before this upgrade. Like, again, I assume it has something to do with the Unity update, but can't really be sure, and I'm not sure if there's going to be like new settings for draw distance, or if this is a bug they're going to fix or what. But if you are standing back enjoying your handiwork and suddenly all of your components are missing, fear not, they're still there. Just a weird draw distance artifact right now. So that's it for the review of the existing components and how they've been updated. Let me reset the scene here, and we'll take a look at the new components. Alright, here we are with the new components for today's wipe and main branch update, and let's start with the most popular and anticipated, which is the HBHF sensor. It's effectively a proximity sensor. It stands for heartbeat, breathing, humidity, and footstep. Important thing to note here is that it has a 20-meter radius, that's about 3 foundations, with LOS. LOS means line of sight. So it is this thing, you can see it in the inventory, it's this thing on the wall here. It cannot see you if you're around the corner. It can't see you if there's a wall in front of it. So keep that in mind. If you put it inside or around a corner, it only senses what's in its line of sight. It also has one other unusual behavior for an electronic triggering device. The laser sensor and the pressure pad, they put through all of their input power -1 when they're turned on. The HBHF sensor puts out only the number of units of people that it is detecting. So even though I'm putting in 20, it only sees me, one person. So it has 1 output unit of power. That's a little tricky because we don't really have other components that depend on the number of input units of power yet, so maybe that's coming in the future. But if you want it to trigger a bunch of things, you should use it as an input to an AND switch and have your main power coming into the AND switch, like I'm going to do here. That way, this 1 unit of power completes the AND equation, and the 20 units of power coming in the other side will pass through, and I can use that for a bunch of stuff. So I'm just going to put it through a splitter here and show off 2 other new components, which are these lights. The siren light, which is a rotating red beacon light, and the blue flasher, which is exactly what it says. It just blinks 3 times, 4 times I guess it is, every second or so. These are going off right now because the HBHF sensor is detecting me in its radius. It is configurable with the hammer. You can pick it up, and then you have the authorized and others excludes here. So if I say exclude authorized, since I'm an authorized on this tool cabinet, I don't trigger it anymore. So you would use this mode for detecting just enemies or unwanted, unauthorized people being in or around the sensor. You could also use it the other way around and exclude others and include authorized, so that it only goes off when people authorized in your base are here. So using it for others would be good for an alarm system or setting off defenses or traps. Setting it to only to exclude others and only include authorized is great if you want it to turn the lights on for you and your teammates, anyone who's authorized on your cabinet, when they come near or into the base or areas of the base, and you can use it to turn things on or open doors, open loot rooms, things like that, which it wouldn't open for other people, which was one of the problems that we had with the laser and the pressure pad, is it opened for everybody and not just authorized people. So this gives you some good options on who you want it to trigger on. Not quite as granular as an auth list like on a door lock or code lock, but it's still nice because in general you can configure it based on who's authorized on the TC and who isn't. So there's your HBHF sensor. That's going to be a really good time. And here's the 2 new light types that we have. They don't make any noise. The HBHF sensor makes a little bit of noise. That's really hard to hear. The next component that we got in the upgrade here is the RAND sensor. The RAND, or I guess they call it a switch, RAND switch, it's a gate, allows pass-through based on a random number. Each time the set input receives power, it will roll true or false. So this is a coin flip. It's a 50-50 chance. Anytime you put power on the set, you have a 50-50 chance whether or not it's going to turn on. And then you can reset it with this handle here. Let me hook her up to some power, and we'll give it a go. I'm going to bring some other power into this switch over here so it's convenient for playing with that input. Alright, so I'm just going to put this on pass-through so we can see if it's given power. Right now it is not. So here's attempt number 1. Will we get power? Nope. Attempt number 2. Nope. Attempt number 3. Nope. Attempt number 4. There we go. 4 tries and we got power. And then if we want to turn it off again, we have to put power to the reset. So if you've been making those Russian roulette games on your server for good times, this is a fun way to add an actual random chance to some of your games. It's not a fixed value, it's completely random. It could turn on. Oh, there we go, it turned right on. So, never know. So that is the RAND switch. Power in, power out, and then a random chance of whether or not it is going to turn on, and there it goes. You can see 20 in, 19 out, so it is a power consumer like most other components, consumes 1 unit. Alright, and now I'm going to get to show off one fun component and a bunch of RF components. So here's the Rabid Radio Lab. All these components came out together. The beam antenna you see in front of me, as well as the transmitter or broadcaster they have here, along with 2 things that are down on my hotbar. That is the RF transmitter and the RF pager. All of these are the 4 RF components that are available to us now in the new update. 2 of them transmit signals, 2 of them receive signals. So this guy, the broadcaster, he transmits a signal anytime you put power in. So I'm gonna put some power into it, and I'm going to set its output frequency to 69, and then I'm gonna put some power into the RF receiver here, and it has a power in, power out, just like our other trigger switches. And I'm gonna plug it into the audio alarm, which is another new component we got. The audio alarm does exactly what it says. It makes an audible alarm. So we finally have an audible like alarm system alarm we can use now that makes lots of noise. And if we set this thing to the same frequency as this guy who's now broadcasting, because we got power on it, that audio alarm will go off. So if I set him to frequency 69, oh, there we go. Got the nice screeching fire alarm tone that repeats and repeats and repeats, and who doesn't love that? So I'm going to set the receiver to a different frequency right now so you don't have to hear it. You'll notice that all of these RF components can be set to a frequency of 1 through 9,999, and they do work anywhere on the map. Their range is the entire map. So now I have in my hand what was called the detonator before, but it is actually the RF transmitter now. I think it's still called the detonator. Oh, they did rename it, yay. So the RF transmitter is a handheld RF signal broadcaster, so it does the same thing as this guy here, but instead of applying power to it, you just hit the button. It makes the cell phone interference type sound, and it broadcasts on whatever frequency it's set to. You set its frequency with your right mouse button. It's a little unusual, but that's where it's hiding. So if I set this to, let's say, frequency 7, then when I press this button, it'll set off this guy who we set to 7, and you'll hear the audio alarm. Here you go. So our two transmitters are this handheld RF transmitter and this RF broadcaster, which you would use off of power sources in your base. These obviously can be set to different frequencies, and you can have multiple of them, so that's handy. And now for the ultimate in raid detection, the pager. We now have the RF pager, and it has a couple of different features. First of all, it has a frequency you can set. It's set to 55 by default, and I'm going to set the handheld transmitter I have to 55 as well, because this will be the easiest way to demonstrate this. You could also have it, of course, come off of the broadcaster here. Anytime somebody triggers your sensor, it turns on the broadcaster and it rings your pager, and here's what the pager sounds like. So it is by default an audible alarm. It's also visual because it has a little lightning bolt on it when it's on. And I'm going to turn this guy to 55 so it stays on, and I can show you something else. When you select this, if it is beeping, it has a stop option that doesn't normally appear unless it's triggered, but stop temporarily silences it until it is triggered again. Not to be confused with the silent on feature, which makes it vibrate mode instead of beep mode. So now it's in silent on mode, and when I pull the trigger to set it off, still get the lightning bolt icon, but all you hear is the vibrate. Zzz. Zzz. So if you don't want to make noise with your pager, if you just want it to vibrate, that right there is how you do it. So since these are new, and that's still buzzing, stop please, thank you. That also works all around the map. So carrying the pager with you is a good way to know when things happen back in your base. Or you could carry like two pagers, one for people to set off with like a handheld, and another to set off with your base station when you're being raided. Or maybe one pager per base so you know which base is getting raided based on which frequency it is. You'll notice they do display their frequencies on the screen here, down at the bottom. There's still a bug where they the transmitter loses its frequency temporarily when you move it around from the hotbar, but it does keep the value, so once you scroll it comes back. Don't worry about that, just a little bug. And the pager, if you didn't notice there, it re-triggered when I moved it in and out of the hotbar. So if you had silenced it, it goes back to being triggered if it's turned on like it is right now when you move it back and forth. So just so you're aware of that happening. So yeah, RF components work all over the map. You can have multiple pagers, multiple transmitters on different frequencies. Could get interesting if you pick the same frequency as somebody else, like, well, I don't know, 6969. So there you have it. We have the HBHF proximity sensor. Puts out the value of the number of people who are around it, and it can be set to pick up authorized, unauthorized, or both. We got the rotating beacon siren light. We've got the flashing blue light. We've got the random sensor, or random, sorry, switch that you can use for just applying power and having it turn on randomly with its reset. And of course we have all of our RF components, the broadcaster for sending a signal from a power source, the transmitter, the handheld transmitter for sending a signal on the go, pager for receiving a signal on the go, and the RF receiver for receiving a signal in your base and passing power through to devices such as the new audio alarm. Which, by the way, you can hear it about 10 squares away. Maybe a little more. It's about here that you can still hear the alarm. So the audio alarm is probably going to be best used in your base for local purposes. You're not going to hear it across the map or at your neighbor's base. So there you go. If you're not too busy flying the new minicopter around, then take a moment and try out some of the new electrical components. Good luck, and don't suck.